Hey, everybody. Welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so excited to bring one of the brightest minds in immigration in the global mobility space to you today. Very blessed and honored to have Miss Carrie Koski, shareholder of Ogletree Deakins, on with us today, who will discuss all the happenings and breaking news in the immigration space within global mobility. Really excited. So I want everybody to go ahead and leave questions. We're going to bring Carrie out right now. Carrie, how are you?
Hey, Ben. Thank you for having me. Thanks to your team. Hello.
Yeah, it's so nice having you here. And where in the world are you right now, Carrie?
I am in my office. I'm actually in the office. We're back 2 days a week here at Ogletree in Denver, and I'm in Denver.
Yeah. So you're in the office, I like to call it.
I'm in the office.
As opposed to the home office.
Right. I'm in the home office 3 days a week. I think about maybe a month and a half ago, we came back to 2 days a week, and it's like a party in here. I mean, we're at a third capacity, so I see about a third of my colleagues.
So it was interesting because I'm doing a lot of these global mobility roundtables, right, with our corporate friends, right, and they're talking about all their different work scenarios and on again, off again kind of situations. And it was interesting because some of the ladies that were in this mobility and this in-source mobility, in-house mobility program were saying, yeah, we're doing, 1 week on, 1 week off, and half of our department, i.e. me, is here 1 week, and then she is here the next week, but we can't collaborate. And the whole point of being in the office together is to have more collaboration. Mm-hmm. But the way that they split it, we can't collaborate because we would collaborate together. Do you find like there's positives and negatives of the 2 days on, 3 days off? What are your thoughts about it?
As an employee, so immigration, we're still heavily paper-based. So we actually have to file paper petitions to USCIS. And so there needs to be a critical mass of us here. But I am a very experiential person. And so for me, absolutely, being in the office and seeing my colleagues and having that face-to-face is the best. It is more difficult to collaborate virtually, but I've become a pro at Zoom, Teams, Skype, any kind of virtual platform to have meetings. We're in, so we're making it work.
Yeah, and now you can add StreamYard to your resume of virtual platforms.
Exactly.
So very cool. Hey, we got a bunch of people checking in right now. We got a dozen people on LinkedIn. We got a half dozen people on Facebook. Go ahead, and I want to give yourself a shout out. Shout out your company. Shout Carrie out if you know Carrie. Leave something in the comments here. We're gonna check everybody out here. Hey, this scoundrel right here, Vinny Valverde.
Yeah, hey Vinny. Hi, Vinny.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, Vinny. Yeah. So how do you know Vinny?
So Vinny and I actually, I think we go back to high school. I think I went to high school with his wife.
Do you really go back to high school with Vinny?
Exactly. And my colleague in the office here, Jimeen Chen, is a friend of Vinny's. And so, Vinny and I know each other from growing up in Colorado.
Friend of Vinny, I think, is a large group. I don't think that's a very exclusive group. I feel like that's half of Facebook is friends of Vinny. Yeah, seriously.
Well, he's so good at it. And the best thing about Vinny is that he's a big sharer. And right now, with everybody holed up in their homes, they need people to share with. And so, thank you, Vinny, for doing that.
He says, hi, Carrie, miss you.
Miss you too.
Talk a little bit, Vinny's a really good, before we get into immigration talk and as we let people kind of come in here and let people check in, I want to give you an opportunity because you're really involved in the Rocky Mountain Relocation Council, RMRC. Can you give us a quick little plug for RMRC? Tell us what's going on there. And if people don't know about the Rocky Mountain Relocation Council.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Ben. So the Rocky Mountain Relocation Council is our regional relo group here. And we have a lot of activities for folks in the area. I mean, obviously, we've gone heavily virtual. And right now we're planning a virtual conference for in the fall. But we're doing virtual Zoom happy hours and things like that to keep people together. We also share a charity interest with you. Our charity is the Food Bank of the Rockies. And I know that you did a huge truck pull for hunger. So we are raising money for the Rocky Mountain Relocation Council charity, the food bank. And then we have a scholarship program, which is really cool. So high school seniors that move to the Denver area are eligible to apply for our scholarship. And so we offer 2 of those a year. So I love it. It's a great group, and our board does a lot of hard work. I mean, it's a volunteer board. So, I think it's a great resource for folks in this region.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you're in the region, get involved with RMRC. I hear amazing things about it. Let's see here. We've got some folks checking in here. Again, hit that heart button. I'm always hit that little. Is this it? Is this it? Hit that heart button. Let Carrie know we support her. Let's see. We got Francine Drusty. Hi, Ben. Hey, Francine. Francine hooked us up yesterday with the author here, Judy
nice.
Holler. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, from Fear is My Homeboy. So that was an awesome
Cool.
talk. If you didn't get a chance to check that out yesterday, definitely check that out. You will be on Cloud 9. Let's see here. Jamie Massler. Hi, Ben, Carrie, and Ceridwen.
Thank you.
Yes. Double hi.
Ben, you said it right. You said it right, Ben. Thank you.
Well, you. I got to tell you what. Honestly, I love having lawyers on because they're so prepared. I mean, they write it out. They give me like the phonetical. I love it. It's just wonderful. It's great. Real pros here. Sandra Clary, love the office return. This will be interesting today. Hey, Sandra.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Mena El Safari from Dubai. Still, the direct contact is very important. I think she's talking about the in-person.
Right, in the office. I say it's like a party. I mean, I get dressed up to come to work. I see my colleagues. It's important.
Yeah.
But we got to be safe. I mean, we have our, here's my mask. I wear this anytime I leave my office. We're safe too. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. Lynn Griffith says, hi, friends. Looking forward to today's discussion. I'm looking forward also. And if you have any immigration questions also, I always love saying when we have the immigration lawyers come on, it's your opportunity to get some free legal advice. Okay. If you're a global mobility practitioner, if sometimes you're just a person that has an immigration issue of their own privately. I get people in global mobility that are asking me, hey, can you hook me up with an immigration attorney? Because I'm trying to get from the UK to the US. And
yeah, I did. I'm happy to talk about anything immigration related. I'm happy to talk about.
Awesome. Hosea checking in from Seattle. Tony checking in from California. Francine, crazy storms happening here in St. Louis. Work with Andrew Metcalf in the St. Louis office.
Oh, nice. Great.
Oh, very cool. Is Andrew one of your associates?
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Vinny says, I used to skate with Richard. Miss my crew.
Oh, yeah.
RC.
Yeah, Richard is my partner, and he's an inline skater, and that's how Vinny and him know each other. Richard, when we had our baby, Richard would take him out in the stroller on his rollerblades. And I just was, crossing my fingers all the time. They never crashed, thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness. A baby in a stroller and some inline skates. I feel like that's come out of a movie or something, especially in the Rocky Mountain region, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wrong
he
side
was safe. So, but
yeah. That's great. That's great. Let's see here. Laura Gazian, hi, Ben and Ceridwen. Looking forward to conversation in person is so important, but yes, being safe is key. It's interesting as we balance the in-person and the obviously virtual, right? Have you, you mentioned you've become quite versed in some of the Zooming and all that, but
yeah.
Where do you think, just on a personal level, before we hop into the immigration talk, where do you think we land, in 6 months to 12 months with the balance? Do you think that we're going to be doing 1 week on, 1 week off? Do you think that people are going to be downsizing offices? We're going to see an increase in remote work? Or do you think, as a shareholder and a manager within your company, do you think that pendulum might swing back the other way and say, hey, we tried remote work. Here's what didn't happen. And we need people to come back in the office.
I think it would be great if people were back in the office. That said, everybody has different work styles. Some people actually perform better remotely and they're more productive. So it really just depends. But I think this has been a great test to see how it works. And I think businesses have to make decisions. If they don't have to spend the overhead on commercial real estate, They might not. And I know that a lot of companies already have like sort of a work share or a office hotel situation where folks are in 1 week and out the other week, and they share with the partner. And I mean, those things are workable. And with all of the virtual meeting technology that we have now and that we are now experienced at using, there's no reason why we wouldn't go that direction, at least more than we were before.
I think that's actually a really good segue into question about working remotely, RIFs, reduction in force. How does this play, and what is the approach? What should companies' approaches be with foreign national workers as they look at RIFs and remote work?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. The most popular work visa is an H-1B. And frankly, companies have a ton of different approaches to dealing with H-1Bs and remote working. But I mean, there are compliance steps. It's controlled by the Department of Labor. So companies have to actually do a physical posting or notify their workforce that a particular group of people are working remotely. So it's really all about notice to the workforce in order to comply with the Department of Labor. And really what I recommend that companies do and what global mobility professionals do is go back to the filings, go back, look for your remote workers, go back, check their filings, and see if they need to be amended. If there is a huge change, there might need to be an amendment. And in terms of reductions in force, it's a little bit more complicated. For temporary reductions, obviously, there are a million different conditions that would impact that folks should really talk to legal professional and hash that out. And then
do you know any legal professionals?
So many. So I mean, that's another thing. The immigration bar has really come together. The American Immigration Lawyers Association is really a great resource and has a ton of information posted. So the information's out there. It's just trying to decipher it. And for folks that are in the United States that have are impacted by a RIF, they can always move to a different employer. If they have a valid visa status, they have 60 days to find alternative employment. And we're seeing a lot of that. I mean, everything in the market right now is being adjusted. And so people, unfortunately are being let go, but there is opportunity out there. And, if folks find another job, they can just get a visa transfer. So that's what I would keep in mind.
Awesome. And you mentioned like temporary reductions in force. I mean, are you referring to like furlough situations?
Exactly. Yeah, furlough situations. Some visa types don't allow for that. And so there needs to be a formal termination and then a rehire.
Which can you help us understand which those are?
Yeah, so H-1Bs are probably the most strict visa type, and employers really can't furlough H-1B workers. They have to make the decision either to terminate or to continue to keep those folks on, maybe at reduced hours. They can always file an amendment if they want to reduce hours. On the other side of that, it's tricky because if you're treating H-1B workers differently than the rest of your workforce, then you could be subject to discrimination claims. So it's a fine line, and we're helping companies through it right now.
We've got some great questions coming in here and comments. I want to get through all of them here, and I promise everybody we're going to get to everyone's comments here. Richard Corona, CEO of Enterprise Database Corporation in DC, checking in. Hey, Richard, good to see you. Let's see here. Man, we got some good stuff here. Gabby always tunes in for the immigration stuff. Appreciate you, Gabby. Excited for this discussion. I'm hearing hopes for an injunction on the June 24th presidential proclamation based on there being limited connection of the proclamation to U.S. economic conditions. What are your thoughts? Thank you.
We hope so too.
First of all, can you explain this to those of us who don't know the ins and outs of what Gabby's referring to?
Sure. So she's referring to the visa ban, which banned H-1Bs, L-1s, Js, and H-2s. basically the US government is not allowing anybody that needed a visa after June 24th to enter the United States until January. And the justification was that the US jobs have to be protected, and the folks who are in those visa jobs are taking those US jobs. So there's been a lot of talk and challenge about that justification because there's no report, there's no study that empirically shows that those folks that had H-1B petitions approved and were just waiting for their visas were negatively impacting the U.S. economy. Actually, the converse is being presented, that these workers need to come back and get the U.S. economy going again. And so there are a myriad of legal challenges, and companies are joining via amicus brief. They're joining lawsuits to try and get this enjoined. I mean, the other thing besides that, the purpose is not economic, that argument, the other thing is that there is a substantive change to the immigration statute here, which is not permitted by this administration. What is permitted by this administration is to restrict entry based on national security. But the legal challenges are saying that this goes far beyond that. And that's what it feels like. So.
Well, and it wasn't due to national security. It was due to economics arguments, theoretically, right? I mean, so therefore, outside of executive order, powers. But I mean, what do I know? I'm not a constitutional law person. But I do have a question. You mentioned that a lot of companies are joining this fight or this petition, or where can companies go? I think a lot of our viewers work for companies that would probably support opposition on this. Where could they go if they wanted to support this, or where are they going?
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is obviously a trade organization, and it really has its finger on the pulse of all of this, and is organizing, the largest corporations in connection with the detrimental impacts that they're feeling. So the U.S. Chamber, and then also the American Immigration Lawyers Association, that's obviously an immigration bar, but they're also organizing. So those are the two primary ones that I would recommend connecting with.
So if you're watching this right now and you want to Google the links and put it into the comments, that would be awesome. So people could actually click through on that right now. So if you want to do me a solid,
Sure.
Our wonderful viewers out there. Let's see here. Mena says they're talking. I love when people start talking to each other, There you go. Victoria, hi, Ben and Ceridwen. Does your office have open cubes? If so, how's the setup?
That's a good question. And, Ogletree Deakins is a large labor and employment law firm. So we're highly sensitive to these issues. And right now in Denver, we have a third of the folks in the office, no more than a third at a time. We do have cubes, and we socially distance the cubes. So we've spaced them out. And anybody who's in the office is spaced from a colleague.
All right. Awesome. Let's see here. Roy Ramirez checking in from Broadview, Illinois here. Everybody's talking to Tony. Tony's the second most popular person on the show today, apparently. Let's see here. Vinny has a question. Carrie, what are some of the policy changes that companies are doing to accommodate remote working? Are you adding more than one location to the petitions?
Yes. Moving forward, so it actually depends on existing petitions where we can just do a new posting without doing an amendment. We are doing that. But when we go to extend visas, H-1Bs, other types of visas, Ls, any other type of visas, we will include a remote location on those postings and in those petitions. But ultimately, it's incumbent upon the petitioner to decide that. So they may think, well, no, we really believe that folks will be back in the office by, next summer or what have you, and make the decision whether to include it or not. But in my opinion, it doesn't hurt right now to include the additional remote location.
Okay, excellent. Love all these questions. They're coming from all different angles. It's so fun.
Awesome.
Mena, since we are talking about remote work style, how this is impacting the immigration, especially that the residence permit in most of the countries expires automatically after 6 months from having the employee outside the country.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, and I can't really speak to countries other than the U.S. But here we are, trying to roll with the punches and advise clients, the best course of action, and like Vinny said, adding an additional work location, adding the remote work location. Amending visa petitions to include the remote location. I do want to say that, this visa ban and these travel bans, they impact anybody that's outside of the United States. So folks that are waiting to come in, folks that may have left in March and have been stranded and haven't been able to return. But anybody here in the United States, we're able to continue status quo, essentially, and file extensions, file amendments, file green card applications. The green card process with labor certification is relatively untouched. And there are actually more green cards available within the United States because they're unavailable outside of the United States. So we're able to move through those types of processes. But it's true, folks who are stranded outside of the United States, not only may they lose their status ultimately because it expires and they're not able to get new visas, but, employers are having to deal with some difficult decisions, how to engage remote workers, whether they just have remote work agreements or whether they turn them into independent contractors in those countries outside of the United States, or if they have an entity in that country, then they'll have that person be a direct employee of the local entity. And then PEOs and other kinds of arrangements come into place, but there are a lot of considerations for folks that are currently working outside of the US that are unable to come back.
So many issues here. Let's see here. Janet was kind enough to go and find us the link to the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Mm-hmm. So there we go. So they can check that out as well. I've
been a member since I was a law student. I love ALA.
That was how many years ago? 5 years?
Oh my goodness. Well, I started working in immigration in a small, well, I shouldn't say small, but an immigration law office in Tucson, Arizona before 9/11. So that's how old I wasn't an attorney at that time, but that's how long I've been doing this.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. Let's see here. So I have a question. Oh, Anna checking in. It doesn't say her name, but it's Anna Rossi. Hey, Anna. Good to see you here. Anna's also a lawyer. Have you seen, but she works on the corporate side, have you seen any consulates in Mexico begin to conduct visa appointments again?
So the U.S. consulates, some U.S. consulates in Mexico are scheduling appointments. I don't know of any that are actually scheduling appointments for July or early August, but I know that they are scheduling appointments, and there are a number of different consulates in Mexico, and it's location by location. So what we're telling folks is to go in to their profile, their consular profile, and check to see if the calendar is opened up, and to make an appointment if they can make an appointment. We're also able to do emergency appointments or expedite requests if folks fall within any of the exceptions. So actually, yeah, it was just last week that consulates announced that they would start reopening, or actually 2 weeks ago now. So we're things are loosening up a little bit, and we have more options.
Let's see here. Awesome. Let's see. Hope that answered your question, Anna. If you got any follow-up questions, I'm sure Carrie would love to help here. Tony is asking you to dust off your crystal ball and prognosticate a little bit. I don't know if that's outside of your purview or not.
I don't know. It must be my name. My name is crystal ball type.
All right, Carrie, looking into the crystal ball here.
Yeah.
Tony asked, this is really the question I think that's on everybody's mind that's in the mobility industry, right? Because, we are in the business of relocating people around the globe, right? Tony says, will this affect the amount of relocations going into next year?
I think so. Absolutely. I hate to say it, but with H-1Bs and Ls and Hs and Js, if they continue to be banned until January, then we're not really going to be catching up until, the second quarter. I mean, I would hope that second, third quarter next year, things resume as per normal. Just with people being able to come to the United States, but again, it's this COVID situation. It's the COVID situation, and it's the administration.
Yeah, I would agree. When do you think that it returns back to pre-COVID levels? A year? I mean, is there a timeline when you might foresee it returning to pre-COVID?
I think it's going to be, I think people are chomping at the bit. I think companies really want to resume global rotation programs because, again, it's like come into the office. There's nothing like that experiential situation where you're interacting with colleagues. And a lot of corporations, I mentioned global rotation programs, a lot of corporations have global rotation programs. So it's part of a career path of professional development within that multinational company where they will, quote unquote, station employees at different points in the world with the goal of getting into like an executive function. Obviously training and contributing and doing knowledge transfer wherever they are in the world. And I think that those will resume. Obviously, we'll be leveraging virtual meeting technology forever and more. But I think there's probably going to be, when things loosen up, I think there's going to be a flood. And then we'll just see what happens after that, especially if the immigration rules also are less restrictive. I mean, we've seen a tightening over the past 3 years with restrictive policies. And if those are loosened or go away, I think we're going to be busier than ever.
Well, and I was going to ask you, so what do you think is the kind of the key factor in that?
Of the loosening?
Yeah.
I think a vaccine. For sure. I think people won't be comfortable until there's a vaccine or some other type of solution. And then a change in policy, a change in the approach to immigration, which is probably a change in the administration.
Yeah. So a vaccine and a change in the administration. Mm-hmm. Okay. Just want to make sure
Yeah, fingers crossed.
So I love this. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people. So, Carrie, you're an expert in this area, right? And a lot of us are just kind of, dabble, as needed, right? What do you think is the thing that's going on right now in the immigration arena that people just aren't talking enough about?
Honestly, I think it's probably what can we do? I mean, what resources do we have? What are the creative solutions and strategies that we can take advantage of? There are many visas that don't have these restrictions. For example, e-visas, employees have to share nationality with the owners of the company of an e-visa, but it's a good alternative to like an L1 or an H1B.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that E for a minute, because you're right. I don't hear anybody talking about that, right? So let's explore that, because I think you're right. I think people want to know the tips and the tricks, right? When they're calling up legal counsel, like, hey, I'm going to shell out some cash. I want to know some stuff I can't just Google, right? So what is the tips and the tricks with the E?
Well, yeah. So the big thing is that the E is based on nationality. It's based on treaties between the United States and other countries. And so, for example, if you have a British company, and it can be a publicly traded company, it can be a huge company, but if you have a British company and it's at least 50% British owned, then it can transfer British employees to the United States. And this is one of the visa types that is accepted under the visa ban. And consulates are actually scheduling these appointments now. Same for Canada, same for Mexico. I mean, the visa appointments aren't available this instant, but they're becoming available.
So help me understand this if you don't mind. So 51% owned by a nationality. So and I'm trying to think of an example here, but say I'm a technology company, and we're owned by an entrepreneur and maybe some private equity, but that entrepreneur controls 51%, and they were the Indian national, maybe. So you're saying that if they're an Indian national, that if they wanted to recruit talent from India, they could potentially get by on the e-visa?
So there has to be a treaty in place.
Okay.
And I don't think India has a treaty, but I'm almost certain it doesn't. Hold on, let me see. So you need to make sure that the company has a treaty with the United States for an E.
So let me use a different example. What about here? I'm in Detroit, right? And so we have automotive companies from all over the world, especially Europe, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have Europe and Asian automotive companies. So say there's a German. Does Germany, for instance, have a treaty with the U.S.?
Let me check. There are so many.
Okay. I know I'm asking, put her on the spot.
No, it's
These
right here.
Germany, right?
Germany does have a treaty. Yeah, Germany does have a treaty.
So if I have a German automotive company here in the U.S., like I think is Borg Warner. I'm speaking out of school. I don't really know that, but my friend works over there. So I'm just going to say, let's pretend they are. Let's pretend they're 51% German, right? Mm-hmm. And they're over here. Then they could actually have German nationals on the e-visas coming over. That's Absolutely. Very interesting. Mm-hmm. You know, that could really come into play for some people, I think, in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, the tricky part of e-visas is that so many global organizations are publicly traded, and it's difficult to demonstrate the nationality, and then you're limited to just people of that country. But it is a beautiful solution. And, you know, I work with some very large companies that use the E, and where it's come into play more recently because of this.
So interesting. Now, for instance, we had somebody who works for a French company, but they have a U.S. headquarters here. Would they potentially be able to have engineers from France come over
Absolutely.
on e-visas?
Absolutely. If the company is French owned. Yeah. So if it's U.S. owned, then no. But if it's at least 50% French owned, absolutely. Bring the French engineers in.
Wow, that's so interesting. So that could really come into play. Wow, that's what I like. What other tips and tricks are you seeing out there, Carrie?
So there are a couple other visa types. There's one called an O1, and these are for really highly skilled workers.
Yeah. This is my
you know all about the O1, right?
Yeah, this is what I'm planning on going. I'm traveling the world on the O. No, I'm just kidding.
People love the O. So it's for individuals of extraordinary ability. But it works really well for folks that, frankly, have PhDs or who have published or who are the face of companies and have lots of press. My practice in O1s has definitely increased because it's the go-to for high-level folks in companies if they're not using an L or an H.
So, like, if I have like 3 articles in Mobility Magazine, maybe I've published enough, you know.
Yeah. And you get some people that say that you're amazing. I mean, I wouldn't, I wouldn't discount an O for sure. But the other thing is that the exception that was just announced last week to the Schengen area ban include ESTA. It includes business travelers. So, folks that are in Europe or another place who couldn't come to the United States on business can now come to the United States on business.
Talk a little bit more about that. I want to explore this exceptions. I want to explore the exceptions and some of those things as well. Tony's asking really quick before we get into the rest of that and continue down this path. He's asking, how long is the e-visa for?
So that's a good question. It depends on the treaty. Most countries have 5-year treaties with the U.S., but all e-folks can be in the United States for 2 years. So it's a 2-year status in the U.S., and it can be extended indefinitely.
Okay. And then Henri says, we're coming in. I think he's coming over to that French company.
Come on in.
Coming. That's fantastic. And then, I want to keep going on this path, but we got some great little questions here. And if you have more questions, please go ahead and leave them in the comments. Love to ask Carrie these wonderful questions. Gabby says, what's the story with the F1 freshman students not being able to start at a school doing e-learning? I thought this was rescinded. Also, Last question, I promise. No, please don't ask more questions. What's going on with initial DACA applications not being processed now? So two questions in here. Let's talk about that one
Gabby
first.
knows what's going on.
She
Gabby,
does.
I mean, she knows exactly what's going on.
I know.
Yeah,
She
I think
does.
I need to call her and we can have a brainstorming
She
session.
needs to come on here and write all the questions for me is what she needs to do.
Exactly. No, it's interesting because these are the two most recent developments last week and this week. So last week the administration announced that that incoming students who were enrolled in all online classes won't be given visas. And that contradicts what they said about 6 weeks ago, that they were going to let folks in even if all online. So ICE has said to schools, do not issue the paperwork for visas if you have new students that are going to be all online. Returning students who are all online can return. So folks that were enrolled last year can return. If they were enrolled as a March, they can come back even if all online. But it's a bummer, and some of the most prestigious, largest universities threatened to sue, and there's some legal challenges around that. And then with DACA, this issue was just announced yesterday. Actually, I heard it on the radio, and then I learned a bit more about it. But DACA has been in place, and it's not going away. But this administration is doing what it can do to shrink it. Initially they had wanted to rescind it, and the Supreme Court said that you can't rescind it. But they've shrunk it down from 1 year extension, from 2 year extensions to 1 year. So DACA recipients, you should get a 2-year work permit. Now they'll get a 1-year work permit. And still no new applications. So new DACA applicants are not allowed. And there haven't been any new DACA applicants for several years now, but we thought that might change, and it's not going to.
So great questions, Gabby, and I encourage you to ask more if you got them. You were talking about exceptions. I want to go back to this exceptions thing. I think this is interesting. This is where the nuance is, and I think the value is for our listeners. Let's talk about a few of them. Canada and U.S. immigration. Yeah. What is the status there? I know Rory was asking the same question there.
Canada and Mexico is where I meditate because it's relief. It's really, I just bring Canada into my mind, and Mexico too now.
It's your happy place.
It's my happy place. It's my happy place because Canada. Okay, there is travel is limited to essential purpose, but work-based visa status in the United States is deemed an essential purpose. So coming into the United States from Canada on a work visa, you're not going to have issues. I mean, you have to be prepared to answer questions about what your role is with the U.S. organization, et cetera. But the visa ban on L's and H's does not apply to Canada, because Canadians don't need visas. They just need approval notices. So Canadian H's and L's can continue to enter the United States to work, which is great. And then TNs continue to be available. And with U.S. consulates opening up in Mexico, Mexican nationals can apply for TNs. So it's great. I mean, it's somewhat restricted, and folks have to be careful when they're going to Canada because of quarantine, but we continue to focus where we can make an impact, and that's U.S.-Canada travel and immigration.
So talk to me, you mentioned business travel a little bit, but can you kind of go into a little bit of the state of business travel?
Yeah, so actually I had to dig deep into this because I had somebody who who was in Europe and wanted to travel to the United States on ESTA, and there's a Schengen area ban. It's still in place, but the administration did announce that people on ESTA or B visas would be able to travel to the United States, but they said, this is the interesting thing, is that ESTA, or the visa waiver program is another way to say it, is a visa-free status. It doesn't require that people apply for a visa. But the exception said that these folks who have ESTA would have to contact their consulate, which didn't make a lot of logical sense because they would never have to do that before. And so some consulates, and again, it's a consular by consular basis, and this is where you might need help figuring out whether or not you're a national of a country that needs permission in order to travel on ESTA. I know that the UK, they're saying ESTA travelers, you don't need to contact us, but you need to work with your airline and make sure that the port of entry that you're flying into will accept you as a business traveler. And there are lots of FAQs out there, but it's promising that business travel will resume, hopefully.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Where can someone go to find out if business travel is allowed to the port of entry that they're going to?
Yeah.
Yeah. hey, this is how it works, okay? I ask questions, you give me answers, okay? When this breaks down, chaos ensues, okay? Pandemonium here, all right?
Well, that's a complicated question because there are so many ports of entry. A few weeks ago, we thought that we were going to have the same success at Logan, Boston, that we had at JFK, New York, and it was different. It was different. So folks really need to talk to their airlines and then, call Customs and Border Protection. All of the phone numbers are published in whichever airport you're landing with Customs and Border Protection, or if they have attorneys can do that on their behalves.
So what you're telling people is before they schedule a trip somewhere, they should call Customs Border Protection or whatever port they're going to, and they should ask, hey, am I going to be allowed to enter?
Right. And the airlines, the airlines are keyed in. Obviously airlines aren't the US government, but they are coordinating with the US government on this. And then, before they schedule, actually they should check the US consular website in their country. So in the UK, that would be London or Belfast. In France, it would be Paris, and in Germany, Berlin, Frankfurt, etc.
So we talk about travel. How do you obtain a waiver to travel ban? So waivers is something from an exception or not exception standpoint, but waivers. I got a note here to ask you about waivers. How to obtain a waiver to travel bans?
Yeah, so initially when the H-1B, I call it the H-1B travel ban, but it's the visa ban with L's and H's and J's. Initially, the waiver was very broad within the national interest, but recently they've further defined that into COVID-19 response, and it can be secondary response as well. And then also working as a U.S. contractor for a federal agency. So if you fit into one of those two, or your client fits into one of those two categories, there should be a way to get a waiver. And then in addition to that, if work is within the national interest, if there's an argument that your client or you have an executive that is working on, economic or finance policy for the company, and they need to travel to the United States to work with their colleagues to help with the U.S. economic recovery, that would be a great case too. There are lots of industries that need those high-level executives in the U.S. to work on that, and so we would make cases for those folks too.
Speaking of making cases and things, there's a lot of bad news right now in immigration and global travel. Have you had any success stories? Have you had any situations where you're like, you know what, this worked out? We actually got something done here in a very difficult area, and or things that you've heard that companies or strategy companies are using with some success. Is there kind of a glimmer of hope or something that actually is working right? Besides, I know Canada is your happy place, but is there
no, the U.S. is my happy place. This is my happy place. but Canada's been easy. You know,
Yeah.
that's where that is. Yeah, you know, there are happy places, and you know, we experience, you know, small victories every day, even, and you know, sometimes because conditions are as challenging as they are, you know, those wins feel even sweeter. You know, and like I said, if you're in the United States, we can file changes of status, we can file extensions, amendments, different types of visas, and those are going through. I mean, in some cases, H-1B cap cases, which are, you know, is the big event every year, those cases are flying through very quickly. And people are getting green cards. You know, people were getting green cards for a while without interviews, which was very exciting. I mean, I had 2 entrepreneurs that work with me here in Boulder. You know, Silicon Mountain is what they call it. And I filed national interest waivers for them about 2 years ago. And, you know, we've been working pretty hard for the last 2 years, and they both got their green cards in the past 2 weeks. And, you know, they have families here, and you know, they're part of the community here. So it's just really exciting that green cards are still going through. You know, certain green card processes are, you know, knock on wood, and don't share this, but they're untouched, and they're going by quite quickly. So we love that, and that's what's making it worthwhile to deal with all these challenges, because you know, the U.S. economy will continue and it will recover, and you know, when it does, there will be an intense demand for U.S. visas and visa work, and for folks coming to the United States and continuing to do business here.
Did you just tell me not to share something? No. So last Friday, we had Rebecca Peters, who's the vice president of government affairs for Worldwide ERC, on the show, and there was some breaking news, and I wanted your take on this, or if you knew anything about it, where USCIS announced that they would postpone furloughing 70,000 of their staff. Do you know anything about that? Have you heard anything? What are your thoughts on that?
So this furlough is like, you know, sort of, I've been in denial about it, honestly, and I know about it.
Well,
and
it's working, apparently. The ostrich
No,
approach is working with the furlough. USCIS,
you know, but it's something that you know, is really scary. It's really, really scary to my practice. And you know, I mentioned AILA, and you know, AILA and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they're working to lobby Congress to fund USCIS. That's what we need to do. That's what needs to happen. Congress needs to fund USCIS so that we won't experience these furloughs, so that adjudications won't come to a screeching halt. It's been delayed until August 31st, which is great. So file what you can between now and August 15th with premium processing, so you can get a decision on it. You know, and hopefully we have a little over a month. Hopefully Congress will act and fund USCIS so we don't have these furloughs. I mean, unfortunately, the hardest hit section of immigration processing with these furloughs has been, and I think will be, like asylum adjudications and some of the other, you know, more you know, areas that really need help, you know, where people are really, really struggling. And I think those might be the hardest hit, but we're preparing for it and we're advising accordingly.
So your advice to people watching is to get as many applications in before the 15th of August to give yourself some time.
Processing. Yeah.
With premium processing.
Mm-hmm. And that is a little nugget for you.
There you go. And if you don't know anybody that can help you with that, Carrie does. So we have a question here from Henri, and I say Henri. I think I heard somebody say Henri once. I don't even know. It might be Henry. You know what? I don't know. Henri. USMCA is not changing over NAFTA, or is it?
Not the immigration benefits.
He clarifies in regards to immigration.
Yeah, no, not the immigration benefits. Yeah, so all of the immigration benefits are intact as they were before. We still call it TN. I need to start calling it USMCA, but I still call it NAFTA.
To explain the acronyms for us who don't have a JD, can explain the acronyms here that we're using here for everybody.
So NAFTA is the North American Free Trade Agreement.
Yep.
And U.S., Mexico, Canada agreement or alliance or something like that. I don't
Is
remember the
replacing
last.
NAFTA,
Right.
pretty much, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And why is this important to immigration?
Because there are certain immigration benefits that were conferred under NAFTA. So NAFTA is a treaty, and I mentioned e-visas that are all conferred under treaties. NAFTA is one of those treaties. In addition to e-visas, we have the TN visa, which is heavily used by Canadians and Mexicans for 63 categories. We're using it a ton right now because other visa types aren't available for engineers, computer scientists, accountants, industrial designers. There are a lot of occupations that benefit under the TN. So there's the TN, and also there are certain business travel provisions under NAFTA that facilitate, Canada, U.S., Mexico travel. I would say those are the two primary immigration benefits under the now USMCA.
And Henri says, at this rate, long-term assignments will get back in style if you ever get to cross the border, that is.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this real quick. I mean, kind of like almost strategic level here. What do you think the impact to companies will be short-term, long-term with the constrictions on immigration and travel?
I think it's going to be somewhat of, it's a knee jerk, but also a delayed reaction. I had a client initiate a short-term assignment like last week. So it's still happening. And like I said, I think that companies and individuals are really eager to travel and really eager to resume the activities that they did. So I do think that there's going to be a flood. But all of this boils down to cost. And if companies can save money by leveraging digital platforms and working remotely, I think that they will do that too. So it really, I think, will be a combination. But nothing will ever replace in-person knowledge transfer, training, deal making. And so I think we'll always have people. I mean, it's a global economy. It's a global economy, and a lot of that has to be experiential and with folks meeting face to face.
I think it's so interesting you say that, right? I mean, as a business development person, I literally feel like my body is out of whack, like my rhythms are out of balance right now because I haven't traveled, I haven't been to a conference since March 17th in Chicago, when COVID was like breaking out every day, and every day I was getting a notice that March Madness was canceled, the NBA season was canceled, and I'm just like, my reality was crumbling, right? It was like Inception. And so I and I'm like at the buffet scooping the hotel eggs on my plate, looking at like, what is real right now, and so I feel like so out of whack. So I crave what you're talking about, which is that traveling, getting back to it, and interfacing. Of course, I balance that with my own, desire to stay alive.
Right, safety.
Yeah, and my family, right? And so I think, though, what's interesting is I think there will be this rush to virtual and digital platforms, very much like what we're doing right now. But I think
thank you for this, by the way. I mean, this is so important. I mean, in this past 6, 8, 3 months, we need stuff like this. I mean, this is the only way that we can share and learn and make sure that everybody is engaged.
Well, and what's interesting is this becomes a competitive advantage, being able to do this and do this well. But a year from now, the competitive advantage might be going to see people face to face if nobody's doing that. Right. And exactly. I guarantee you the person that's sitting there in front of you that you're shaking a hand with and you're sharing a meal with and a cocktail with has a 2-to-1 advantage at least over the person you did a Zoom meeting demo with, right?
100%.
You know? And so
I mean, we wouldn't have done it in the first place ever if it didn't have so much value. I mean, I travel internationally as well. And yeah, I mean, FaceTime is important. I mean, as a young attorney, everybody's telling me you have to get FaceTime with shareholders, you have to get FaceTime with leaders, and there's a reason for that. We have to see each other face to face, and I have to see my colleagues, I have to see, the people that I work with, and to tell them I appreciate you face to face, so they see it in my eyes. It's just really important.
Yeah, because there's a glare right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're being disingenuous. I can't tell. There's a glare. No, but then talking about the workers though too, because I think you bring up a great point, right? So as a young associate, right, people are giving you this advice that FaceTime is critical to your career. I think you've seen that. You obviously extol the virtues of that. I agree wholeheartedly. Now we go into a virtual environment and we start onboarding people into our organizations, and we start bringing on these new college graduates into our organizations. How are we really acculturating these people to our organizations? How are we going to ensure that they get the FaceTime and they make the meaningful relationships, and how do we
such
even...
an interesting philosophical question, because I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, I attended a presentation with a sociologist, and she said that younger generations, millennials, and I guess Gen Zers, they do not go out. They are not going out and getting into trouble. They're staying at home, and they're connecting virtually. So I do think that folks will become more accustomed to connecting, and there'll be more business platforms that pop up like Instagram, and LinkedIn will be 3 and 4 and 10.0, and down the road we will have this ability to interact, but there's nothing like in-person engagement, and I think it will always be that way. I mean, it's proximity, it's affinity, it's just developing that extra connection. There's nothing like in-person connection.
Yeah, I agree. I worry sometimes that the young people right now, that this will kind of create a disconnected generation. In a way, it's a more social, but a physically disconnected. I mean, I don't know if you know any young people, or maybe you have kids or anything of this age, but when you call them on the phone, they don't pick up the phone because they're so afraid of that, the confrontation that's imbued in this medium, right? Yeah. And it's like, so anyway, so being in the same room with physical human beings might just be too much for some people.
Well, but I also think that some people, I mean, everybody's different. Some people really have the talents of connecting and personalizing things, and some people are shy, so it just depends. But there is nothing that will replace in person. I mean, I think as soon as we can have in-person conferences, and people are thirsty for it. People want to see one another and be with one another.
Agreed. Gabby, true to form, has come through with another great question for us, Gabby. I appreciate you really carrying this conversation. Thank you, Gabby. What areas should U.S. immigration practitioners prepare themselves to know in the coming weeks? What knowledge set or even resources should we focus on? Love this discussion. Great insights. Thank you, Gabby. You're the best.
Well, one thing that is perennial on a 30-day cycle is the COVID-19 physical proximity exception to doing I-9s. I mean, it sounds so boring, but it's a big thing. So employers can't onboard folks normally. So they're using remote verification of I-9 documents. And it's being extended, that temporary policy for remote verification is being extended on a 30-day basis. So that's coming up later in August, and it's really important to be apprised of that. These furloughs, I think get what you can done now before August 15th, and then consular opening. I mean, we're seeing consulates open. Folks can go and apply for visas. Whether or not they can use them is another question, but we should definitely be guiding employees and visa applicants to get visas at consulates where they're open.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thanks, Gabby. Carrie, great answers. Carrie, this has been very insightful. I love the tips and tricks. I love the e-visa stuff. I appreciate you affirming my belief one day I'd be visa eligible. So this has been
It's called Tier 1 in the UK, by the way. If you go to the UK,
Yeah.
it's Tier 1. So
Yeah. The lawyers are like, I'll fill out whatever application you need. Okay. I don't get paid if you get it. I can fill them out. Okay. No problem. I'll fill out an O for you. No problem. Sure. No,
I
but
do
this,
think you would qualify, Ben, honestly. I do.
that's sweet.
I
Thank
do.
you so
And
much.
that's my niche. So yeah.
Nice. Carrie, this has been great. I always like to give the opportunity to give a final word. So Carrie, if you were to leave us with a final word for our audience today, what might that be? What's a final thought?
I mean, just, I guess, keep your heads up and keep yourself engaged. I mentioned a couple of resources: U.S. Chamber of Commerce, American Immigration Association, your ERCs, your Rocky Mountain Relocation Council, and your regional relocation councils. It's just important to share and to support one another and to make sure that the knowledge is out there. Somebody knows. So just ask questions and support and be supported.
Fantastic, Carrie. This has been wonderful. Appreciate all the comments and the questions from our audience. We had a very lovely, engaged audience today. I love talking immigration with smart people. So, Carrie, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. This has been great. Really appreciate it.
All right, everybody, take care.